Well, my basic premise is it's always a good idea to just let the exchange rate float. However, we know that if we can identify what might be what's called an externality or something driving a market, if you can identify the shock, sometimes it's better to offset the shock directly.
Yeah.
Or if you like, in broad terms, if you know where the distortion is, it's better to deal directly with the distortion in a market than to actually do something else to try and offset the distortion.
Right, and we know what the shock is. It's foreign central banks.
Right, and so
Right.
I was very precise in my writing on this, and that is if they're holding cash. Now, most central banks don't, but if they're holding cash or currency, then you should be just providing the currency. You should be doing that either directly to the central bank, or if they're in the market, what you can do is you provide the cash, you buy the foreign exchange, put it on the balance sheet of the central bank, and then increase the money supply.
Right.
But that increase in the money supply doesn't have any domestic impacts because the increase has all gone into foreign ownership.
Sure.
So that way you could directly intervene and offset the shock. That's totally different to a change in the exchange rate driven by commodity prices or driven by an increase in some technology or changes in trade flows. That the market adjust and let the exchange rate do it rather than the price level.
Right, and you're not talking about it just to get the dollar to fall even, perhaps. You're just talking about it to mitigate one of the shocks that is pushing the Australian dollar up. Is that?
That's correct. I mean, it may well be that the exchange rate doesn't move at all. It may well be that everything is going to adjust, or it could be that it takes 5% off the exchange rate. I'm not even targeting any exchange rate. My proposal was just shift your foreign exchange reserves on the balance sheet of the central bank to offset the shock. Now, there is a risk in that because you are accumulating foreign assets, and if you're accumulating euros and you think the euro is going to collapse, then you've got a bit of a change in risk.
How do you mitigate this?
So that it's not completely risk free, but the point was actually firstly to get people to think about, well, maybe the markets can be, when you're looking at a market based system, maybe you should think through this idea that you should never intervene in any market, because in most markets there's always some reason to intervene if in fact there's a breakdown of the core structure of the market. It was a reaction to this article which I didn't expect.
Yeah,
in the sense that to question the pure float seemed to be heresy. But again, there's a long literature on leaning against the wind in currency markets, and if everything works perfectly, then you never need to worry. But if you have a world of imperfections, which we do, then you've got to be at least having the debate on when is the best time to intervene in the market.
Because he did come in for a bit of criticism, and I've just noted a few of them down. What's the chance of George Soros coming along and having a bet against it, stuff like that? Do those problems arise, do you think?
Well, again, if you're pegging the exchange rate, then you're subject to all of this speculative attack.
Yeah.
But I'm not pegging the exchange rate. I think it shows just a lack of understanding of what I actually... Well, firstly, what I said, so that's why I wrote the AFR article, to make it precisely that under the particular set of circumstances, you can make an argument. But a lot of people who responded didn't respond to what I said. They responded to what they thought I said.
Right.
And it was quite interesting, the backlash, because it shows you just how much ideology there is out there, and occasionally it's a good idea to think rather than speak.
Okay, so where do you think you can take this debate now? Are you going to respond to those?
Not at all, because the point is, there's a very simple proposition. If you identify the shock and you can offset the shock, then there's a case to be made for it. I wouldn't say I regretted what occurred, because when you start reading that someone like Paul Howes, who's a union leader in Australia, agrees with me, then my first thought is, well, probably I'm wrong. But actually he wasn't agreeing.
Misinterpreted.
No, he wasn't agreeing with what I said. He was agreeing with other people's interpretation of what I said, and that is to bring down the currency. I never said to bring down the currency. I said
point.
neutralise the shock so you can better identify what's happening, and that makes monetary policy easier if you can reduce some uncertainty.
There's a bit of talk that we're experiencing the same shock.
Yeah.
Here, obviously, we're not AAA like Australia, but we're still a highly rated government sovereign. So do you think that the same argument could apply here to New Zealand?
Well, again, I don't know sufficient about the New Zealand situation to be able to really make any informed comment on that. But it is a dangerous slope to go on, because there can be political and other inertia behind these sorts of decisions. So what could start off as a very sensible argument could end up in a sort of landslide attack in the market, and that's the last thing I want to see occur. But I think the debate has to be had that there's no market anywhere that's completely free. There's always some government somewhere intervening, And the question is, if that's happening, then maybe your response is to actually intervene as well.